Hi, I'm Ron Bartlett, and I'm a re-recording mixer, and super happy to be here on Mix with the Masters, and of course sitting with one of my good friends, Alan Meyerson.
Hi, Mix with the Masters universe. Alan Meyerson here, fresh off of a week in Saint-Rémy de Provence. Fantastic week as always. And I'm here today in a different role than you're used to me. Today I am going to be your interviewer because you're going to get to meet one of my best friends in the entire industry, a guy that I've known now for, I figured it out yesterday, 26 years, who is not only one of the greatest re-recording mixers on the planet, he's also a phenomenal musician, phenomenal composer. He is one of the guys that taught me the difference between mixing music and mixing music for film. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But right now, I just want to introduce you to my friend, Ron Bartlett.
Hi, I'm Ron Bartlett, and I'm a re-recording mixer, and super happy to be here on Mix with the Masters. Of course, sitting with one of my good friends, Alan Meyerson. He's helping me out today, and can't wait to get into it.
This is just of the 167 films that he's done. This is just a few that make a difference to me. Ron and I have been fortunate enough to work together on Dune. He did Life of Pi, which in my opinion was the film that made Atmos worth doing because it's the first time it sounded that good. Blade Runner, The Fifth Element, 8 Mile, Us, X-Men First Class, Sherlock Holmes, Hairspray. And then in addition, I just want to tell you that Ron was the re-recording mixer on Reservoir Dogs. And the reason I want to talk about that one is because Ron actually was the only re-recording mixer on that, which he did as a single person mix without any automation whatsoever, and created probably one of the most iconic mixes ever done. So Ron's got his pedigree, and we're going to talk about some different techniques, re-recording mixers. Maybe Ron, you could tell them a little bit about how you came up in the industry, and then talk about, for some of the people here that don't really know what re-recording is and how it got that weird title, talk a little bit about what your world is like.
I started, as a drummer and moved down to LA to be in rock bands. And of course, still play. As you can see, there's tons of drums around here. Still love playing, but I got into working in film as a day job, really. And I started as an apprentice sound editor. And I thought, this is great. We can go show to show, and I still have time to play gigs and all that. So I continued being a musician, but working in the film industry. Then as I started being an assistant, I started to get a little bored. Like, well, what are they doing? They're editing. That looks way more creative and fun. So started to learn that. And then I got hired as an editor. I worked for, 6 years or so as a sound editor. And then I was like, yeah, but it looks more fun to be in the mix stage because I would deliver all my tracks there. I was working at Weddington Productions. They knew that I had worked on consoles and 24-track machines and all that. And it was in a time where we were going from mag recording and it's all on film and, old school stuff that everyone was cutting on. And that's how I learned to cut as well. I started using Soundmaster and some other software and things to actually do edit list recordings, and I would string up 1/4-inch tapes and scrub the sound and mark it and pull it backwards and then cue it with a computer. And it was really clunky, but it worked. And I would cut the sounds on a 24-track machine by just recording them back on there. And I was using faders and EQ because why not? It's there, right? Everyone else was just cutting straight sound effects, and then it was all mixed on the stage. So I was presenting tracks that were already pre-done a little bit, had some panning, some EQ, some reverb sometimes. And it was really fun. So I started doing that on a number of shows. Then it was like, hey, can you do this little temp mix on this section or a scene or something? I'm like, sure. So I'd put something together, and then we could show the director, producer in our studio, like, this is the idea. And then they would take it to the main stage, like at Tadeo or somewhere like that, and mix the show. Then it was like, well, we got this low budget movie. I think you can do the whole mix. I'm like, I guess so. We have a 32 input Harrison with 0 automation, not even fader automation. So then I was like, okay, let's see what we can do. And I got two 24-track machines and that, and, it's pretty basic, but let's do it. So I mixed a couple of short films first, and then I mixed a couple of features. And then this really crazy guy walks in our studio and says, I'm really excited. I want to do my film, but I just don't have any money and I need some help and I've never done this. And it was Quentin Tarantino. He comes in with Lawrence Bender and Sally Menke, producer and film editor, and want to do this film. I'm like, great, let's do it. I'm excited. Started putting the tracks together and I thought, well, I've only got a 24-track machine. And I put a piece of tape across the remote and I was marking like, okay, I got 3 tracks for dialogue and I got, 1 background. Finally, I couldn't get the whole score on the 24-track. So I strung up a 8-track reel-to-reel and I put some of it on there and I was doing anything I could do. It was like really trying to do a film with 2 sticks and a rock. It was kind of silly. But it worked, and we mixed the whole movie, Reservoir Dogs, in that room.
So there's 2 24-track machines. Actually, all of your source material is on one, and you're mixing to the other 24-track machine what is, in fact, your final mix.
Correct.
Right. So you're really just using the 2 machines as a way to get your final mix done, and you're constantly recording and then coming out of record. And when you say match out, explain exactly what you mean to match out.
If you've already recorded something, which kind of goes back to my weird title, re-recording mixer, it's because you're using tracks that have already been recorded and you're re-recording them onto another master is where it came from. So anyway, as you record tracks, they were already given to you, edited. You've got those tracks up on faders. You record that onto my other 24-track machine. And now you've recorded a section. If you roll back and try to fix something or change a level, you've got to then back up and move your faders to the spot that you were at, because if you want to punch in a little bit earlier, you need to match the level and make sure it doesn't bump, right? So without automation, you either have to remember right where you were, or you're constantly flipping back and forth pec direct, which is an old school term of photoelectric cell and playback. So you're going input, playback like that all the time. So on the 24-track remote, I was literally just flicking the input output like that, to the cell sync side. So I was going in and out like that. And then I would move my fader up and down until I heard it match. I'm like, great, bang, and I'd punch in. So then it was a seamless punch in. You had to match the level. So that's what that meant.
Which is totally amazing.
It's just silly. I would never do it today.
So just quickly, I'm going to tell you the story of how we met. Years ago, I was working on a film with Hans and Penny Marshall called Renaissance Man. Well, no, I'm sorry, Preacher's Wife.
Preacher's Wife.
Nowadays, when you go into a re-recording stage, there's 2 mixers. There's Ron, who's your head mixer, doing dialogue and music, and then a guy doing sound effects, or some combination of that. That does change from stage to stage. But in those days, there was a music mixer, a dialogue mixer, and a sound effects mixer. And Penny was not enamored with the music mixer. So she liked me. She mentioned to Hans, do you think Alan could do that? The guy who was the dialogue mixer on that, a guy named Chris Jenkins, sat me down and said, look, we'd like you to actually be a re-recording mixer on this film. I said, well, that's great. I'd love to, except I don't even know what a re-recording mixer is. So I was in my 3rd year of the industry, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll teach you everything you need to know to do. It's really easy. You just mix it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll do that. And I was fortunate enough to show up at the stage, and there was a young Ron Bartlett there with Chris, and this was my beginning. And so as it turns out, what they mean when they say giving you all the time you need to learn what you're doing is 20 minutes, because by 20 minutes, I had to be recording. There was all the, score, and then there were all the songs, which I had mixed all the songs also. It was one of those rare cases where I had mixed both, and I had pre-dubbed the music too. The first time I was given full control of the music, and we had to bring in some digital technology. We brought in the Yamaha O2Rs because we ran out of faders. And the board only had fader automation, so any EQ changes we had to do in real time. So it was like mixing a record in 1978. There's a million things to talk about, but since I mentioned pre-dubs, why don't you explain a little bit what the pre-dub process is?
Okay. If you think of it as like a giant funnel, like you have 1,000 tracks, and then you get less and less and less to get to your final master, is the overall concept. So you do it in groups. So you have food groups of like, okay, here's the dialogue predub. We only listen to all the production dialogue that was shot on the set. And then you'll bring in ADR, which is automated dialogue replacement, kind of a long name for looping or replacing a line. So you take these different elements and mix them down into food groups called predubs. And your predub can be any format you want. It can be as wide or narrow as you want. So it might be all centers if it's all production, or it could be LCRS, or back in the day is what I'm thinking. And now it's, 5.1, 7.1, and now it's Atmos. Predubbing these days is really just writing automation, and we're not printing anything anymore. We're just writing in the box in Pro Tools. You're still dealing with the food groups, like you still mix all just the dialogue ADR, maybe the group ADR, and you do that together, but it's all still separate tracks, which is great. You can still get to anything you want, but it's already been gone through and shaped and cleaned up and all that. And of course, the music comes in separate, which is what Alan does. He gives me all of his tracks that he's already actually mixed. I love getting tracks from Alan. He knows exactly how to split things out. I mean, we'll show you in a minute, but he'll have, percussion here, orchestra there, brass. I mean, there's a litany of different types of mixes, but all those mixes play together, and that's the score. But I can still go in and, do what I got to do and control things individually, which is the whole point of having predubs. It's a manageable way to get things down into food groups that you can then get on a console and work without going nuts trying to find every individual thing that would take you forever.